The Boston Celtics find themselves at a crossroads. A franchise historically synonymous with championship aspirations, the Celtics now face an existential question. Should they hit the reset button and embrace a full-scale rebuild, or do they stay the course and hope for a return to contention once Jayson Tatum recovers from his Achilles tendon injury? As we enter the offseason, the reality is that Boston's current roster is not equipped to compete for a championship in the immediate future. The heart of the team, Tatum, suffered a devastating Achilles injury, which has effectively derailed the Celtics' championship window for the time being. While Tatum remains the undisputed centerpiece of Boston's future, his recovery presents a unique set of challenges that could have long-term ramifications for the team's trajectory. The Celtics, under the stewardship of President of Basketball Operations Brad Stevens, now face a critical period of decision-making. While Tatum's return is inevitable, it's important to acknowledge that the superstar forward will need months, if not a full season, to get back to his pre-injury form. This means Boston could be facing a 2-year window where they are not legitimate contenders for an NBA title. For a team with a storied legacy and a passionate fan base, that reality is a tough pill to swallow. The question becomes, do they patch up the roster for a short-term push, or do they embrace the long-term approach and rebuild? Boston's roster, as currently constructed, is an aging group with a handful of key contributors on the wrong side of 30, like Marcus Smart and Al Horford, both of whom could soon be past their peak. They are undeniably valuable players, but relying too heavily on them to prop up a contending team for the next 2 years could be dangerous. The Celtics also have some promising young pieces, but none of them, outside of Tatum, are capable of leading the team to a championship in the short term. The middle ground strategy for Stevens would involve bolstering the roster with players who are still in their prime, say players in their mid to late 20s who need a change of scenery to reach their full potential. This would keep the Celtics competitive and perhaps even playoff worthy during Tatum's recovery, but also ensure that the team doesn't get too old too quickly. The goal here would be to keep the window open for when Tatum returns, without sacrificing the franchise's long-term flexibility or sustainability. However, as history has shown, finding the right players to complement your star while not locking yourself into a long-term commitment is a delicate dance. Boston's front office has been historically good at making adjustments on the fly, but their biggest challenge now lies in finding the right balance between competing today and preparing for tomorrow. The full rebuild, a tough but potentially rewarding decision. Alternatively, the Celtics could take a hard look at a full-scale rebuild. This would involve shedding some of their veterans, possibly trading key assets for future draft picks or young players with high upside. While the idea of blowing up the roster may seem extreme, it could very well be the smartest move in the long run. In the event of a rebuild, Tatum would be positioned as the focal point of the team. A new roster could be built around him, one that fully maximizes his abilities as a scorer and playmaker. It would take time, but with the right mix of young talent, draft picks, and a bit of luck, the Celtics could find themselves in the same position in a few years, contending for an NBA title with a fresh, young core surrounding Tatum. As of now, the Celtics have a relatively clean salary cap and a solid set of assets that could be leveraged in trades. This gives Stevens the flexibility to make moves should he choose to embrace a rebuild. But there are inherent risks here as well. The NBA is a star-driven league, and the longer Tatum is surrounded by mediocrity, the more likely he is to start looking elsewhere for championship contention. The Celtics can't afford to waste too much of Tatum's prime, especially with the rise of other Eastern Conference powerhouses like the Milwaukee Bucks and Philadelphia 76ers. The upside, however, is that Boston could position themselves to be a real threat in the years to come. The franchise has a rich history of rebuilding successfully, dating back to the era of Paul Pierce, and it's not out of the question that a similar blueprint could be followed today. The right combination of patience, smart moves, and roster construction could allow the Celtics to bounce back stronger than ever. What's next for Brad Stevens and the Celtics? Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to initiate a full-scale rebuild will rest with Brad Stevens and the Celtics front office. The window for contention may have temporarily closed, but that doesn't mean it's gone forever.